So we're looking at this website, Florist Books, and the reason why is because I came across this story of the Dragon of Canoe, the Dragon of Canoe who meets St. Serif. And I've been on a study for quite a while now, looking at the different saints, St. Columba, St. Kentigern, St. Macer, and basically they're all the same beings, the same people, but they're all retaining or relating to the same story. And that is the story of a dragon and the slaying of a dragon. So if you follow my stuff about Hercules and the slaying of the dragon, you'll see that the Catholic Church, as we go on, the Catholic Church have replaced the story of Hercules or George slaying the dragon with their own saints. And of course this is how Rome and Constantine managed to hide what we would call the Celtic or the Gallic traditions. And these Gallic traditions are basically what our ancestors seen in the heavens, and they recorded what they seen in the heavens in folklore and stories and tales. And this story of St. Serif is really a story of these serpent energies. But I'll read this story from the Florist Books, and this is a 2024 rendition of the story of a great dragon and St. Serif. And as we go through this, we'll look at the different important words, important phrases that were used in the old narratives, which are retained in this new version of the story, because there are certain words that, as I read through this, that pop out to me. Ancient yew, juniper, you know, just a couple there that catch my eye right at the beginning. But we'll read this story because it's quite a good story. It's a lovely story, but it's deeper than just a story of a young girl and a dragon. It's about the head, the skull, and specific parts of the skull which cover the area that we know as Perth and North Fife today. So, in the 6th century, the Great Wood of Caledon stretched across the vast area of Scotland. Over rugged mountains and through green glens, trees grew in abundance, mighty oak and hardy pine, cedar and beech, aspen and ancient yew, juniper and rowan. The forest near the hill of Canoe gave shelter to all manner of life. A home for bears, Ursa Major, and wolves, Sirius, and wildcats, the lynx in the heaven, roe deer and red deer, and these represent the tree itself. It was also the home to broca. Now bear in mind this word broca. Broca reminds me of the word broccoli, and there's a reason why it reminds me of the word broccoli, because I believe it's connected to that part of the brain. Broca. It was the home to broca. So who's broca? The woodcutter's daughter. A woodcutter, like a carpenter's daughter. Who else do we know who was a carpenter? Anyway, the woodcutter's daughter. Sounds a bit like the dromedar and that too. Persephone was a daughter. So Broca was a sturdy and talented lass. Why does it tell you that? Broca was a sturdy and talented lass. She was broad. Yeah. She was the calic. She stretched over all. She was a sturdy and Sophia, talented, wisdom. She was clever. She chopped firewood, split kindling, and could whittle and carve the most amazing wooden creatures. Broca had lived her whole life in the woods, and so when she opened the hut door, one bright sunny morning, which is the house of Cephas, where the sun went down, according to Andis Collins' book, in the year 3117 BC, the sun set and rose in the house of Cephas. So Broca, and we'll go back to this word Broca soon, Broca had lived her entire life, her whole life in the woods, and so when she opened the door of the house one bright sunny morning, she was quick to sense a change in the air. "Looks like it's going to be another lovely day," said her father. Who's her father? Peter Cephas. "I don't think so," said Broca. Remember, this story is in Perth, so Andromeda is there. Huh? "I don't think so," Broca replied, wrinkling her nose. "What's up, lass?" Her father came to stand beside her. Broca knew the smell of the forest, the tang of the pine, the scent of the fir, the aroma of the apple wood. Apple in the tree. See, all these things.
Yeah. And the pine as well.
And the pine. These are all there for a reason. And the fir was wafting on the wind. It was none of these. She frowned, then she said, "Something is burning." So, something is burning.
Yeah.
That's the first thing she notices. And this is what the story... It's not telling you that something is burning. It's this plasma event. This is a recording of the plasma event in ancient folklore. Forest fires are very dangerous, thus the woods already had fire breaks and water channels. They had fire breaks and water channels, or was it salt channels carrying water and electricity? Anyway, and piles of long-handled brooms, the broom of heaven, to break down the smouldering sparks and embers of the fire. Broca hurried with her father to the village, to the meeting place. And that's important why it says that. It's in modern, but the word meeting place, we would just say town hall, but it's the meeting place where the elders meet to decide, you know, and that's an old Celtic tradition. They went to the broch, the house, which was the meeting place there to decide. The broch was the strong tower as well. If they were going to war or anything was happening, they would go into this meeting tower, this tower, a strong tower. So the meeting place where people had collected brooms and buckets of water, they moved swiftly towards a plume. And that's important because the royal families use the word a plume, or have feathers, plumed feathers, as the plumed serpent of South America. And this is all important to do with this. Okay, they moved swiftly towards a plume of smoke that was rising into the sky. Again, it tells you into the sky, the plume of smoke. Something's flying into the sky. As they drew nearer ahead of them, around the base of a tree. Why does it mention that? Why does it mention the base of a tree? Flames were burning with a strange luminescent or luminous glow. So this is what the serpent is. This is what the story is recorded. But it's also an electrical event, discharge in the brain, and we'll see why. Broca's father spoke fearfully. "I've never seen it before myself, but that could be dragon fire." Dragon fire. So the cosmic event or the plasma event is being recorded here as dragon fire in the sky. And this is where we get the idea of the dragons, because we understood these energies went under the earth and over the earth, and they could be seen like in an aurora borealis. In fact, the word aura is the serpent chasing its aurora borealis is the serpent chasing its own tail. So the word aura, it's also in the word Orion as well, Orion. But anyway, a dragon, Broca replied. "Obviously. We don't get dragons in these parts." "We do now," said Broca, and pointed to the top of a massive oak tree. She's pointing to Draco coming down. The oak tree always represents the sacred oak to the druid, and the massive oak tree is the serpent dragon and the hydra, but it's the Draco she's seen. Looming above the branches was a huge dragon, the ground shuddering as the beast came thundering straight at them. Yellow eyes glared from below hooded lids, and its snarled jaws were agape, revealing rows of jagged teeth. The dragon's black tongue snaked out like fire, like a you know, like smoke coming from a black furnace. The dragon's black tongue snaked out, and with it a scarlet, scorching burst of flames. So this story is a new rendition of an ancient story telling of the plasma event, and it's describing dragons. But as it goes on, it talks about a hero that comes in, and the hero is George. But the Catholic Church have taken it and replaced it with St. Kentigern, St. Columba, St. Patrick. All the saints have replaced George. Wherever George is wrestling the giant dragons, it's St. Patrick or St. Kentigern or St. Macer that's put in the place. And you can actually see St. Patrick's on the lowest realm. The Glasgow saint, I can't remember who's the saint of Glasgow. And then you've got who is St. Kentigern, who is the same person. They're all the same person, but the same person being that they're imitating, who is St. George, or Hercules, who is also Marduk of the Bible. So Broca and her father watched as the dragon made for a deep cave in the rocks, and this cave is still there, and we'll put some footage in of the surrounding of that cave and that mountain in this video. It's going to make a den for itself, Broca's father said in a worried voice. It intends to stay in Kinnoul. Now this word Kinnoul, across the water on the other side of Firth of Forth, is Kinneil, the Kinneil estate. And I'm not looked at this word yet, but I'm sure that this word kin, you know, kin Lochleven, kin, it's an important word. Kin Lochleven is just down beside that. So, and the word kin to us usually means family.
It does, yeah.
Or of like mind. Kin. Akin to something, yeah. So, it's going to make a den for itself, Broca's father said in a worried voice. It intends to stay in Kinnoul. Now, I think Kinnoul is a certain part of the brain. I think it relates to the kinetic, the thoughts.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, something to do with the head.
That would make sense.
Because, as we will see in a minute, this word Broca is actually a part of the brain.
Yeah.
I gave the game away here with this, but I wanted to leave that to near the end. And we could, but I'm going to make myself a den for itself. It's going to make a den for itself, Broca's father said in a worried voice. It intends to stay in Kinnoul. Forever? Broca asked him. Once the beast settles in, it'll take a miracle to move it. That evening, the villagers planned a hunting party to slay the dragon. How many times have we seen that in that portion of the heavens, the hunting party? But Broca had been close enough to the creature to see that its hide was well protected. Spears and arrows, Sagittarius, and stuff like that. Spears and arrows will bounce off its scale, she said. When we have never failed yet to bring down a wild beast, the hunters replied. There's always a first time, said Broca. I hope you can run fast. Orion running through the heavens. There's always a first time, said Broca. I hope you can run fast. Fortunately, the hunters in the heavens also could run fast, for their weapons bounced off the dragon and they were forced to retreat rapidly from Kinnoul Hill, where the electric charge was hitting on the top of the hill. The male energy hits the top of a hill. So this electroplasma energy wasn't a dragon, it was plasma energy. Masculine, male positive charge. The female's the negative charge energy. And the female goes under the ground, negative charge energy, as you would imagine, negative, positive battery, you know, positive up top, negative down the bottom. But this was actually bouncing off the Kinnoul Hill, and like I'm saying, that word Kinnoul is something to do with the brain, and because the other side of the Firth of Forth, to go forth, you know, to speak forth and so on, the other side of the Firth of Forth is the Kinnoul Hill, which I know very well too. So here we are, they're saying, no, we'll kill the beast and we can run fast. Fortunately, the hunters could run fast, for their weapons bounced off the dragon, and they were forced to retreat rapidly from Canoe Hill. This time we'll trap it with our nets, they said. The net is Orion. Yeah, Sagittarius is the arrows.
Yeah.
The net is Orion's net. There'll be 3 times they'll try and trap it, watch. This time we'll trap it with our nets, they said, at the next meeting. Again, they use the word at the next meeting. Important, showing you the crossing point, the meeting point where all the elders come together.
Yeah.
And remember, this is actually happening under the Pleiades. So the Pleiades would have represented the 7 elders as well, of each community. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's happening under the Pleiades, bringing the Pleiades in line with the 7 lights above. So this time we'll trap it with our nets, which is obviously the Orion's belt portion of the sky. They said at the next meeting, but Broca had seen the dragon's sharp claws, great jaws and strong teeth. Nets will be torn to pieces, she said. We have never failed yet to trap a wild beast, the hunters replied. There's always a first time, said Broca. That's twice she says it. It's a spell. I hope you can run really fast. Fortunately, the hunters could run really fast, for the dragon tore their trapping nets and rampaged about, gathering up, why does it mention hens, and sheep, and geese, and grain, before tottering back to its den. Why does it say that? Because in that portion of the sky, you have Auriga. And Auriga is the man with the sheep and the goats, and you've also got Aries. You've also got birds in the heavens in that area further down, and these are all farmland animals. And in fact, if you look at the story of Hercules in that portion of the sky, it's the stables that he has to clean, and the farmland animals. Plus, what we're doing is we're looking at that portion of the sky, which is the zodiac, and the zodiac, the word comes from the word zoo, or we get the word zoo from the word zodiac, because that portion of the sky, the upper portion is living beings, humans, forms, and the lower portion are all animals. So this is why in this portion, in Orion's belt, the net, we have the dragon gobbling up creatures, because those creatures are Auriga, Aries, Taurus, farm animals, you see. During the 3rd meeting, the hunters resolved to build a high barricade, a tower like the Tower of Babel, to encircle the village and trust that the dragon would shortly move on or somewhere else, or go somewhere else. As they said this, Broca recalled the words of her father. Once the beast settles in, it will take a miracle to move it out. Now Broca had heard a tale of a holy man named Serif, who lived a few miles away in Dunning. Now that word Dunning is the word Dan, to judge, and in the Bible it talks about Dan being a serpent and a viper on the road. In the blessings in Genesis, when Abraham's given the sons his blessings, he puts his hand on Dan and says to Dan that he and his descendants will be vipers on the road. And the word dun, wherever we see dun, the word dawn. The Draco is the dawn, the Apsu, the male energy, and the dawn is where we get the Tuath Danann, who are the fairy gods, the gods who rebelled and went down. The Danann, the Tuath Danann, it's there. And Dan also means to judge, the house of judge, of the judge. So we have judgment, an electromagnetic pulse, a judgment. When I say a judgment, I mean not nature reacting to a negative response. It's a build-up of plasma due to our negative activity, and so it's nature's response and having to expel that. And so it's a judgment upon us, really. And that's how the Bible sees it. And this is what this story here is telling. It's telling this electromagnetic event that hit the hill at Canoe and wrapped itself around like an aurora borealis, like an angelic light. To them, they described it as a dragon. And this St. Serif, which we're just at now, So St. Serif, now Broca have heard of a holy man, Serif, St. Serif. There had been talk of this man might even be a saint who could work miracles, but when Broca mentioned asking for the holy man's for assistance, nobody paid attention. So later on, walking home with her father, Broca said, apart from improving the running skills of our hunters, we are no further forward in solving the dragon problem. I myself will find the holy man's serf and bring him to Canoe. You're a fine, capable lass, Broca. That's because it's using the mind. Broca is, what Broca is, for those who do not know, Broca is the area of the mind, the region of the frontal lobe, its dominant hemisphere, usually the left hemisphere of the brain. Now, the left hemisphere of the brain, and it's to do with speech production, language, processing of language, and all that sort of stuff. So it's very important. So the name Broca that we have here, and this area, which I'm trying to show, this area of the ancient kingdom of Fife and Perthshire, the ancient kingdom of Kinross, the reason why it's called Kinross is it's the kin Ross, and the word Ross means head. It's the part akin to the head, you could call it. And it's the same anywhere in Scotland where you see the word Ross. Or where you see the word kin, it means akin to, or part of, or are related to. That, but not just related to a place, but related to an anatomical, physical part in the brain, because that's what Scotland is. You're a fine, capable lass, Broca, said her father, laying her hands on her shoulder. Go and help build the barricades. So following morning, Broca set out on the road to Dunning. In his kitchen garden, the holy man, Serf, listened to Broca and said that he'd be happy to help to get rid of the dragon who was robbing and terrorising the village. So in this story, he says, I'll say a special prayer each morning. I don't think that would be enough, said Broca. At noon too, said the Serif. That should do it. Don't you agree? No, Broca replied. This conversation wasn't going the way she'd experienced. Well, I'll tell you something now. She expected, sorry. I'll tell you now, the reason why the conversation is not going the way she expected is because this is the ancient tradition of retelling a story. Repeating and repeating and repeating. We know it in all the nursery rhymes.
Yep.
Yeah? And all the songs, and this is a modern rendition, but whoever wrote it has kept or retained the ancient storytelling tradition by, I'll say a prayer each morning, number one. I don't think it'll be enough. At noon too, it's not really about that she's not listening and he doesn't. The reason why it's telling us is because it's 3 times, and there are 3 heavens. Yeah, there are 3 realms, and this is what it was about. How about morning, noon and night, suggested Serif. I was hoping that you come to Canoe and deal with it in person. So come to not the first heaven, the second heaven, come to the place where it's happened and deal with it. It's a big dragon, Serif asked. Yes, enormous, said Broca, for she was a truthful lass. Oh dear, said Serif. So the story goes on and he goes away. Serif sighed. I suppose I could come and use gentle persuasion. And of course this is a story for children now, so he doesn't kill the dragon or the serpent. But when you go to other pages, you read that he killed the dragon and so on. But I want to jump to this page, just continuing on the story, and I'm going to pick up on this story. Yeah. Was a dragon once slain in the Perthshire town of